Welcome to another video by your friend, Matthew. Today I want to talk about the chakras. There's a million things I could say about this, but let's just see what happens. A few years ago, I started kind of diving into exploring the chakras and doing meditations and reading about them and journaling about them, just like anything else like this. I try to research, figure out what it's all about, and then reflect on my perspective on these things, and figure out how I might be able to incorporate this map or understanding into my daily life. Right? So a few years ago, when I started diving into the chakras and learning about them, it was really helpful because it highlighted the importance of kind of honoring and paying attention to and opening and healing different parts of ourselves. It showed how multifaceted we are, and how the lower chakras are just as important as the upper chakras. It's easy to think that like something like the third eye or the crown chakra are more important than the root chakra or something. But that's not the case. They're all important. They all operate interdependently. So the word chakra comes from Sanskrit, and it means wheel. So the chakras are usually seen as wheels or vortices, wheels of energy. Energy centers in our body that can be open, they can be closed, they can be healed, or they can be, kind of jammed up or something. And so we can think about them physically, and we can think about them psychologically. A lot of people talk about like the energy body or the subtle body that kind of accompanies our physical body. And, the chakras definitely relate to that. And most traditional sources talk about how there's kind of there's like a channel that runs through our body, from the root chakra to the crown chakra. And, some sources say that there's 5 chakras or 9 or, 66. Like, different people say different things about these energy wheels or energy centers in our body. And, it's obviously there are overlaps with things like acupuncture, and this notion of the Kundalini, which you've probably heard of, is related, obviously. And the idea of the Kundalini, the Kundalini is usually seen as kind of this coiled up snake. That's the image that's used. This kind of coiled up snake at the base of our spine, at the root chakra, that is kind of waiting to be uncoiled, released, so that it can start moving through our body and opening up all the chakras from the root chakra to the crown. And so on an energetic or physical level, I think it can be really fun and healing to explore how different parts of our body kind of have different energy, and how things like trauma or repressed emotions, memories of any given sort, can get kind of stored in our body. And by kind of like focusing on and healing and opening up different energy centers, we can work through that trauma and stuff like that. So there's to me there is something to the energetic and physical aspects of chakras for sure. And there was a time when I would do a lot of meditations focusing on specific chakras. Like I did a lot of solar plexus meditations. I would just look up guided meditations for the most part on YouTube, and listen to the guided meditations and for each of the chakras. But there was a time when I was really focused on the solar plexus because I realized at that time that I had kind of, in some ways, maybe closed, at least partially, my solar plexus, and I needed to open it and activate it. So there's a lot I could say about this, but for me, the psychological component has been maybe what has resonated with me the most when it comes to chakras. So let me just tell you my thoughts about what each one of them represents. The root chakra, which is the first one, the lowest one, usually thought of as at the base of our spine. That it's usually presented as red or reddish, and this to me is where it's kind of it represents our shadow work that we need to do. It represents both our shadow work and our basement. I think about the metaphysical basement that we all have, that we just stuff a bunch of stuff into and we let it get smelly and dirty, and we kind of turn off the lights, and we kind of don't go down there, and we just let stuff fester down there. But it's probably a good idea for us to go down there and clean it up and sweep the floors and throw away the stuff that doesn't need to be there anymore, and organize the boxes and blah blah blah, however you want to think about that metaphor. All that stuff, all the basement work, the shadow work, to me that's root chakra for the most part. And root chakra obviously it's like the most grounded, the most like foundational. So it also represents our kind of day-to-day practical lives, our grounded lives. And so if we do need to work on or heal or open up the root chakra, then that could mean that we need to do some of that basement work, and or it could mean that we just need to become more grounded and not so disembodied and not so abstract, and we need to make sure we take care of our day-to-day responsibilities. All of that stuff is part of the root chakra to me. And maybe I'll make videos about each one of these separately too, but on this video I just want to give kind of a brief breakdown of my understanding of them, which my understanding is shaped by the things that I've learned about these, and it's also shaped by what has made sense personally when I reflect on them. So yeah. The second chakra is the sacral, and it's kind of seen as like just below the navel, I guess, usually. And it's usually connected with our sexuality and our pleasure centers, our sensuality, and our embodiment. Obviously the whole emphasis on sexuality is linked to our embodied experience, our in the body embodied life. And so I would say that if it's closed, then it's because we don't really feel embodied. We feel disconnected with our body, and perhaps disconnected with our own sexuality and our own pleasure and sensuality. And so, like in the tantric traditions, those types of things are not seen as evil like they are in certain other spiritual traditions, but they're seen just like everything else as opportunities, as fuel, as sources to um, to make our lives and our experience more present and sacred. And so we can use our own embodiment, we can use our own sexuality, we can use our own sensuality, our senses, to re-presence ourselves and to be present, and to not escape from those components of our lives. Other people, say that the sacral also is linked to like our sense of self. It's like creating our sense of self. If you think about it in terms of just as an analogy, our development through when we go from being a child to an adolescent. Like when we become an adolescent, we start exploring our own sense of self, and so that's similar to the sacral. It's like exploring and celebrating and figuring out our own sense of identity. So these lower chakras, they do represent more of the personal identity and the personal self that moves through the world. And like I said, that's awesome, because we do need to think about that. And so the 7th chakra system really puts emphasis on how it's you can't have any one without the others. You need them all. They're all important. So the sacral is about the embodiment, sexuality, our sense of self. And the third one is the solar plexus. And as I mentioned, that's the one that I, for a long while, was putting a lot of attention on for myself, because after a bunch of years of being really influenced by Buddhism and Taoism, my own personal way of reacting to those teachings often led me to kind of think that any act of personal will was like bad or something. And I just I know what spiritual traditions mean when they say that sort of thing, but I also know how important it is, depending on what you need to balance in your life. Some people are just so obsessed with their own personal will that can be blinding and that can be destructive. But if you don't have a sense of that in a healthy way, then that can also be unhealthy, right? So the solar plexus is about personal power. It's about willpower. It's about using the solar kind of masculine sun energy to take action, to be proactive, to take initiative, to have initiative, and to be assertive. So those are all things I associate with the solar plexus. The fourth one is the heart chakra, an extremely important one. It's when we start, if we see it like this, the heart chakra is when we start kind of transcending our own personal egos, I guess. And so you have 3 on the bottom, and then you have the heart chakra, and then you have 3 on top. So the heart chakra is like the bridge between the upper and the lower, which makes so much sense, It's like the more we evolve, the more we grow as a person. We need to, the one way that we can make sure not to get too stuck in the lower chakras is to open our hearts. We open our hearts, and then we get outside of our own heads. We realize the importance of other people. We celebrate the inherent worth and dignity of other people, and so we're not so self-centered. So opening the heart, does that for us, and it facilitates generosity and compassion and open-heartedness and gratitude even, and self-love. So the heart chakra has, it's self-love is there. We need self-love, self-forgiveness, and forgiveness of others. All of that sort of thing. So the heart chakra allows us to integrate and to move beyond being stuck in the lower chakras. And it also allows us to avoid getting stuck in the upper chakras too. So the way to make sure that we continue to be embodied and grounded, one way, is to open the heart. Because if we're only in the upper chakras, then we're kind of potentially sometimes too abstract and too mental, and not, on this earthly plane enough. So the fifth chakra, if we're moving from the bottom to the top, is the throat chakra. And, this is about self-expression. And it's also about listening. A few things I read about the throat chakra that have always stuck with me is that very thing. Like, it's not only about self-expression and expression and, speaking up for yourself or, expressing the things that you've learned and realizing the importance of sharing that kind of stuff with others and throwing in your 2 cents and contributing. Those are all associated with the throat chakra, but also listening. It's like we can't really be authentic in our own expression if we haven't learned how to listen. So it's about this receptivity and expression. It's both things. So a lot of people that might need to, work on their throat chakra, they either are too inside themselves and too reticent and too hesitant to express themselves, or they won't stop talking and they won't listen to others and they won't let others speak. So to kind of work through any issues we have with the throat chakra is just to kind of have that balance. It's all about the balance. This whole system is all about balance. So to not just mindlessly talk all the time, to be sensitive to others, and to make sure that we do express ourselves and we're not just doormats or something like that, or too passive. The sixth chakra is the third eye chakra, and so, the third eye, the eye inside, the eye that sees, that's not the literal eye, right? It's not a literal eye on our face, but it's like an inner eye. So you could think about it as insight, and you could even think about it as imagination or intuition, even though I kind of link intuition usually more with the crown chakra. But the way I think about the third eye chakra is like being able to synthesize all of the important things you've learned about yourself and the world and others and the universe, and being able to kind of have a useful and practical way of integrating and synthesizing the most important teachings and wisdom that you've learned. And in Buddhism, there's a thing called prajna, which is like intuitive wisdom, kind of direct wisdom that precedes the conceptual mind. I would say that prajna, it's hard sometimes to pull apart the crown chakra and the third eye, but the third eye is not as non-dualistic as the crown chakra. So the third eye is about insight. It's about using our imagination in constructive ways. It's about synthesizing all the important things that we've learned, and kind of having our own principles. Like when we start developing principles, guideposts, things that help us navigate our lives. I feel like that's all third eye stuff. And the crown chakra is usually seen as kind of right above the head. and it's, you know, often seen as, I think, like a 1,000-petaled lotus. It's like, and it's seen as the portal, like the portal that we can, the opening and the portal that allows us to kind of have that like divine intuition or something. Um, and so I would say intuition and prajna and all that stuff is more linked with the crown chakra. It's not about the conceptual mind. It's about this like non-dual awareness, where subject and object have become kind of dissolved, and there's not a dualism or a separation between subject and object, and our own consciousness and our own experience when we're really activating the crown chakra is more of just kind of complete unconditional presence that transcends our own egos, transcends the conceptual mind, and even transcends the intellect. So, as I said, all of these are important, and it's really interesting. It can be, if you start experimenting with this sort of thing and thinking about it for your own self, then it's a lifelong process of learning, figuring out what needs to be balanced. And different times in our lives, we get out of balance in different ways. Sometimes we're too down here and we need to balance that and get more up here. Sometimes we're too up here and we need to balance that to get more grounded. And the heart is the bridge. The heart is, I think about the heart is the philosopher's stone. The heart is that which transmutes everything into gold. So we have to continuously open up the heart, and by opening up the heart, we kind of naturally balance all those aspects of ourselves, I would say. So those are some of my thoughts. I'm sure I'll share more about this at some point. I hope you enjoyed. Peace.